The following is a short story from a book of short stories called What the Bee Knows by P.L. Travers, who is most often hailed as the authoress of Mary Poppins. This story is called Speak, Lord. You could tell that the Tor, solid upon its ley line, had once not only been an island, but also under the sea. Small pale shells, half buried under the thyme, had taken on some of its royal purple. More than once I had stubbed my toe on an ammonite that was now almost grass. Here and there splinters of chank shell were mute reminders of their old forefather, the giant chank, that long ago purloined the Vedas so that Vishnu in his boar incarnation could dive into the depths to retrieve them in order to make true the adage that all things come from the sea. Cone-shaped, a natural pyramid washed by the invisible ocean, the great hill seemed to be full of magic. Or was it my mood that made it so? No matter, I thought. The earth is a living being, and I, for a scanted breath of time, am part of it, one with the centuries. Had there been an oak nearby, a druid would have stepped out from behind it, hieratic, crowned with mistletoe, part of some ancient liturgical process in which I would have shared. There was no oak tree, nothing but a twisted thorn bush, witch-like at the foot of the Tor. And it seemed to me that from its barbed and craggy branches a lone female voice was crying angrily in part, and in part appealing, "Let me out! Let me out! Let me out!" I peered with caution among the boughs. There was nobody there, nothing but the air. But the cry went on and on and on, a discordant, distant litany. Clearly it came from a time not mine, even perhaps a sphere not mine, a sound remembered by the millennial wind from some old Celtic rite. I had come to the Tor hoping to be alone with it, no tourists clicking their cameras, getting romantically angled shots of the ruined abbey below, of the water meadows that had once been fenland, of the hawthorn tree that had sprung, so they say, from Joseph of Arimathea's staff when he brought hither the Holy Grail and set in motion its legends. Luckily there were no tourists, but the Tor was not to be mine alone. Halfway up the hill, a man wrapped in a black cloak and wearing a large brimmed black hat, flat as a recumbent figure of 8, was leaning against an outcrop of rock. Black Hat certainly was not a clicker, nor was the ancient in priestly robes, some foreign cleric, I assumed, who was blindly feeling his way up the slope, a diminutive acolyte beside him. Every now and then the child would stoop to pick a flower, rest harrow, trefoil, lady slipper, add it to the fistful already gathering, and then again offer a shoulder to the trembling, questing hand. None of these, I thought, would intrude on my solitude. I would forget them and climb on, not as I wished invisible, but at least unremarkable, something not to be noticed. It didn't happen like that. "You're looking for someone," said Black Hat. It was not a question, but an authoritative statement. I was taken aback, off my guard. I had to turn and face him. He was neither old nor young, I saw, but the epithet middle-aged couldn't possibly apply. Timeless was rather the word. His face was like a landscape ravaged. Dry riverbeds ran from brow to chin. The cheeks were two eroded hillocks, the nose a promontory, and his eyes luminous stones, not green, not blue, but turquoise, lit from within. The visage was beautiful, melancholy, grotesque, not the kind to be smiled at politely nor hurriedly run from. Even so, I would show him I was not in the mood for anything more than a mere exchange of short courtesies. "I'm not exactly looking," I said, rather less coldly than I intended, planning rather to climb to the top of the tor and sit there, alone. I hoped that word had a vicious edge. What business was it of his? But he was not going to let me be. Somehow I knew it. He would draw me out, a mere duck to his decoy. What I myself was by no means sure. "Not exactly," he urged me on. "Well, not looking, but in a way pondering. How for anyone with a faculty, aptitude, what will you? How could he set about summoning up one of those that are needed?" It was lamely put. I was suddenly shy. The hugeness of my idea unnerved me. So did his obdurate glance. Characteristically, I had wanted to be alone with the concept, let it elaborate within me, dally with it, and see what happened. "One of those? One of whom?" He was pressing me hard, and I was no immovable object to meet his irresistible force. However unwilling, I could not but answer and give him full of my folly. "Well, you know, the state of the world, so heartless, violent, profane, sliding down the slope, everything that belongs to God rendered unto Caesar, and all those sleepers down the ages who have promised, at its direst need, to return and save the world. How would it be if one, even one, could be awakened and shown the need?" Did they promise, or was it promised for them, for centuries, at the knees of mothers or grandmothers, better still? I said unwittingly, the latter. That was indeed where I had learned it. "I thought so. The best of all seminaries." He smiled at me, indulging a child. "And you in your wisdom," he was now sardonic, "have decided the moment has come. The time and place are right, you think. All you want is the man." "Well, don't you?" I demanded. "Is the idea so improbable?" I was suddenly lost and insecure. I could not argue. He was too much the master. "Maybe. Maybe not. Time and space, throw in matter too if you like, are mutable realities, not absolutes, as you assume. It is unwise to count upon them and forfend. Supposing time and place could be counted on, just whom had you in mind to arise again and rescue our time?" I was thinking primarily of Arthur and the sword freed from the stone. If not he, then St. George, perhaps. And wasn't Endymion a sleeper? And Charlemagne king and emperor? And Frederick Barbarossa? There are so many. You surely know them, I wanted to add, since you seem to know everything, but condemned the wish as childish. "You flatter me." His smile was kind and condescending. "But you won't find it easy," he went on. "Arthur's tucked up in Avalon, in Clitus Arthurus Insula Avalonia, under our very feet, so to speak, attended by the three matras, or fates, if you prefer it that way, and lullabied night and day by their keening. It would need a more potent voice than yours to overtop those ladies. As for St. George, I hear he's rather down in the mouth, and indeed no wonder. To be jockeyed out of the calendar by a bevy of upstart ignorant Romans would discomfort demon, let alone saint. Even his horse, they say, is jaded, and the dragon, too, is mumpish. Then, of course, there are the sun perils. Sumerian Ishtar, peeping Psyche, whom I do not need to tell you, lady, was playing a profounder game than I spy or hunt the slipper, and the peerless she of the pricked finger, all sleeping the chthonic sleep wherein they confront themselves as three in one paired with Eros. It is possible, some elders say, that these are the sleepers who will save the world. As for me, I have my doubts. Eros' soul is out of favor with the world. Not so with me, do I hear you say, but perhaps you still have a lot to learn. Who has not, I said curtly, stung within by his assumption, but unwilling to take up cudgels. And as for your Frederick and his famous oath to wake when the Thuringian ravens cease from their endless arguing, I doubt if he'd fill the bill. Think of that great red mop of beard surging across the table. He fell asleep at dinner, remember? And since beards, unlike sleepers, do not sleep, it must now be halfway across the room. A couch for rats and bats and weasels, a regular beard's nest, forgive the pun. And who is to cut it and set him free when the ravens, if ever, are silent? So, miss, you're in a quandary, aren't you? He teased. Then the weather of his face changed. He cupped his chin in his hand, brooding. There's always Merlin, of course. Would you settle for him? Merlin? I was taken by surprise and showed it. Merlin was the last person I had in mind. But I found myself stammering. I have never quite thought of him as a sleeper. There's something about him I can't quite name it, for indeed my feelings were ambivalent. My heart was aware of its double pulse. I could not hit on the right word, and he saw that I could not. Too slippery, you think? A bit too much of the artful dodger, one of nature's tricksters? Well, maybe. What else could you expect of one begot by a demon on a virgin girl? Half one thing, half the other, and even quite possibly something added. The turquoise eyes were now opaque blue-green stones under water. To comment would have been discourteous, so I only said, well, anyway, he doesn't arise. How could he? He has lost his powers, handed them over to the nymph Nimue, who used them to shut him up in a tower. What use would there be in such a one, a creature of air and darkness? Forgive me, madam, if I suggest that your mythology is a trifle shaky. He did indeed yield up his powers to that plausible, mindless cousining sweetmeat for the reasons which I leave you to guess. You are, after all, a woman. And she did indeed shut him up in a wall-less tower, most potent of all one of his minor chicaneries revealed in a careless moment. But, and take note, lady, of that small word, she added a second spell to the first by binding him with a chain of sleep. And that spell not only set him free, but gave him back his magic. It is a law, have you not read your Ramayana, that to twice bind is to unbind all? It is she herself, the nymph Nimue, who is now in that tower, or its comfortless equivalent, and much plaint does she make of it, except, of course, on those occasions when feeling the need of a female friend. He's a man, ma'am, after all. He pays her a passing visit. He grinned. Then his mockery turned to gravity as a faint "Halloo!" shook the air. "Have a care, ancient," he called through cupped hands. "Take it slowly. Hold fast to that shoulder." The aged man and the young boy were shuffling over the curve of the hill. "Is it you, friend of ages?" came a watery voice as the incongruous yet concordant pair came slowly into view. "Ah, that's the question. Is it? I have been Ambrosius and Sylvester and also the Caledoine. Fish of the sea I have been too, a tall tree on a mountain, a stag of 5 branches with a white forefoot, herdsman to the sun's cattle, shepherd to the sheep of the underworld, and many a one beside. It's a braw man of anywhere who can answer, "This is I." Have done, I know your guises. Are you alone? My eyes are blur. Are you perhaps with the dryad? No, she safely locked away, a chance-met would-be pythoness merely, who thinks to better the fallen world by calling up the sleepers. Ah, poor thing and poorer hope, they are indeed on the path of return, but their bourne is not of this world. It is an illusion all men have that the sleepers will come back. They rock themselves to sleep with it and die with the dream upon them. Aye, sleeping or waking, they dream. She dreams. Is it not so? Black Hat demanded. I had thought to climb the hills safe and sure, wrapped in my cloak of romanticism, unwilling to call it that, however, and not certainly to question it. And here were those two pedagogues, one to my right, one to my left, determined to disrobe me of it as a figment, a thing of naught. But, I said, not without resentment, dreaming surely is a thing that happens. There is something to learn from it. Happens indeed! How right you are! Black Hat gleefully slapped his thigh, but I ignored the interruption. Do you not dream, nor he? I asked, turning from one to the other. After all, hasn't it been said that young men shall see visions and old men dream dreams? The ancient laughed, a kindly cackle. He has no need to squander himself, he nodded shakily at Black Hat, nor of any of his kind. As for myself, yes, I have been indeed such a young man. Oh yes, I, Eli, had my vision. And even now, though entitled to dream, a foolish, fond, old man dream, I abjure the privilege and pray the vision may not leave me till I pass from the minds of men. The same for him. He touched the boy. May he too keep it to the end. He turned with a quavering smile to Black Hat. He is a promised child, he said, long awaited and vowed at birth, and of late he has been called 3 times. So I brought him to you as I too was brought. His bleached eyes sought out my direction. A prophet to be a prophet, he said, for all the summoning from above must have the good will of the old ones as well. Otherwise the folk will not believe him. Aye, 'tis so, Black Hat agreed, hunching himself within his cloak. They need to be told what they do not know yet, but also those things they already know and do not know that they know. He turned and took the boy by the shoulders, gazing at him far-sightedly. So, you've been called, 3 times called, and now until your moment comes you will minister to the ancient. He bent his furrowed brow to the smooth one, was silent for a long moment. Then he raised his head. What is in me now is in you, and because of it the folk will listen. And as well in the tablets of history you will be a maker of kings. These are high matters, he told the old man. Guard him, he is a link in the chain. And he thrust the boy toward his master. But between them the child paused for a moment, gazing at me reflectively. Then with a rough urchin gesture he took a green something from his fistful of flowers, pushed it shyly at me, and turned away. That jacket's too small for him, said Black Hat. He needs a larger one over the ephod. His mother makes a new one each year. She will bring it to us shortly. Well, you have done from what you could and should. Go now both. Be blessed and wakeful. Black Hat dismissed them with upraised palm, gazing darkly after them as they went. And from the seed of the second king, talking apparently to himself, He absently plucked at the grass. Will come a man who indeed will promise, in the spiral of time as already promised, to return and save the world. And you, he turned upon me savagely, stony eyes dark with their brooding. Let you remember what you have seen. You flatter and ease yourself with the myths, with all that's been lived and suffered and gone into the cauldron like a child playing with gunpowder that may explode and destroy you. His eyes assessed me, poring over apparently a mixed and unpromising array of elements. And yet, he said slowly, you are willing, I think, to pay the price, though you do not know what it is. For the untutored, the way is hard. It is an easy thing to dream. Gramarye, the matter of Britain, Arthur, once and future king, returning to fight the present ills, so that you may have your happy ending and the world dance round a maypole. You know, but you have not faced your knowing, that this is not the meaning. Your seminary must have warned you that it is farther to go than that. But have you the courage? Dare you look deeper, deeper than Avalon? Calvary? No, not that, it leapt from me. For that is to be done again. No, never. Yes, again and again until mankind wakes. In the wind there sounded far-off echoes, voices coarse with strong emotion, the sound of a lifeless something heavily falling on waiting knees. Does the wind remember everything? From behind my sleeve, as a child does, I admitted my childishness. Yes, I was dreaming, I confessed, wantoning with the myths, if you like, laying to my soul perhaps the flattering unction of hope. But I was suddenly aggressive. Why should I not dream? Tell me that. What does anyone waste? Your life, said Black Hat somberly. Oh, for man in general it makes little matter. His nights, his days are meant for wasting. But for an apprentice pythoness? You called me by that name, not I. I, indeed, take note of it. By chance you happened on the three of us, the prophet, the boy, and dare I say it myself, at a place where sea, air, earth, and sun once met, and may meet again, and by a chance calling was in your mind. But what is chance? Can you answer that? Or equally coincidence? Go back far enough, and each of them is inevitable, not to be escaped. He brooded for a moment over the words, matching one to the other. Calling, the double arrow, he said. That Allah of mine, as Rumi said, is my here I am to thee. Caller and called summon each other. The boy Samuel was called. Why should you not be? Was he teasing me, I wondered? No, he was waiting for an answer. I gave it in a shake of the head. I am empty. I have not the wit. Empty, alas, is what you are not, but a ragbag of scraps of knowing, and a pythoness, by the way, needs no wit. Has she, do you think, stored up in her mind the wisdom of which she speaks? Not so. A fool could outwit her. It is her business merely to wait, unselved, quiescent, a vessel only, and out of that vessel, void of all things, the oracle is poured. The water-carrier's pitcher, I thought, and at that within me something quickened. My fullness conceived its emptiness. Where was in love with the wine of nowhere? To be known and to be shown to oneself, and as a thing of shreds and patches, given back one's original face, was to be restored to non-entity. Of course, said Black Hat sardonically, I'm not suggesting Pharai, nor Delphi, nor Dona, or the like. Of course not. It was I now mocking him. a rag bag of scraps. He took no notice. But there's many a minor sibyl needed, augurs of the woods and fields, seers of the village back streets. Wise women are not to be despised. Each one in her way is a pythoness, a hen-bird pecking the grain. He grinned. Oh, clever devil with his power to touch me twice to the quick. First Calvary, then the woods and the by-streets, which also have their Calvaries. But you say, I protested, that I must not dream. Can it be learned? How can I be empty? By being full, he said gravely, and that's no paradox. What is your right hand doing right now, for instance? I glanced down, twisting the rings on my left. And where at this moment are you sitting? I had to peer over my shoulder. On a tuft of purple thyme. A tuft of thyme on the skirts of time, always the punster, that's me, he jibed. At himself or me? I could not be sure. You're telling me what I should have known, something within me should have sensed it. He nodded. I need to know what I know, I said, putting out a preventative hand. No, do not touch me, do not teach me, I can only learn. I cannot be taught, the direction is all I need. I would not for my life, he said, it is not the lore that can be taught. Absorbed perhaps, but never taught. Every moment of the day live full, and then I shall be empty. The day is responsible for the night. What is left unlived or not lived fully will take its revenge in dreams, good dreams or bad. There are still dreams, the stuff allowed to be lost from the day making its nightly ferment. And if is ever man's faithful hound with its slavish reassuring eyes. But to one who is ready to ignore that gaze, reflection of his own self-love, then the answer to your if is yes. There will be repose, which is sleep at its purest, the sleep you could say that no breath shakes, the sleep sages aim at. We sat in silence, the two of us confronting the immensity. Again the wind rose, and I could hear the cry in the distance, let me out, let me out. You catch the sound, Black Hat said, grinning. Yes, I heard it when I came to the tor, and it died away when the old man came. It has never died. Does that surprise you? It began when I first set foot on the tor and has not since ceased its plaining. It is you merely who have not heard. Was it true? Had I let fall into oblivion this particle of life? I stared at him. His step had given rise to the cry? And who was it that cried? Under the figure-8 shaped black felt hat, the hat that only magicians wear. The lively turquoise eyes met mine full at once of guile and ruth. And I knew. You are Merlin, I cried, and more softly Meriden. The name in its Celtic guise was a caress. The same, madam, at your service. He flung his black bat cloak wide and swung it quickly again about him, the symbols a whirl on the lining. And that's no syllogism, ma'am. He tossed me a blade of grass from his tuffet. If you call me by my old name, I cannot be but at your service, as you must be at mine. You are now my apprentice. He smiled at me equivocally as he turned and called to the calling voice. I'm coming, my little hare, I'm coming, my rosebud. Au revoir, Pythoness, I must away and wake her. For all she thinks she's awake, she is not. She only dreams that she is. Not that it matters. This is hardly an affair in the realm of Eros, but the goat-foot too has his province. He strode away down the hill, shouting a string of endearments. It is a gift men have, that they never look back. When it is finished, it is finished. This is not so with women. They look for a further chapter, but resisting my wish to know the ending, I steadfastly turned my face to the hill, not failing, however, to take note that once the incessant voice was silent, the wind murmured and sighed in the thyme as though it were in clover. Larks were Te Deuming over the tor, their song rising like a fountain from the chalice of the valley. Apples were ripening below. Avalon means Valley of the Apples. There was no sign on the downward road of the sunset man and the morning boy, and if I were to look back at the thorn bush, I knew I would find it empty. Had I dreamed all this? If so, it was hardly a good beginning to begin my apprenticeship. No, it had not been a dream, for as I sat down at the top of the tor, cleansed for a moment of myself, with the world turning and I with it round its still and unknown point, I found in my hand 3 blades of grass. One had been flung at me, gift rather than missile, I dared to think, and the other 2 must surely be my crumpled share of the fistful of flowers. I knew I would have to learn what they meant, maybe take many lifetimes learning. But for now I would wait, be still and listen. A pythoness. Like Prince Hui's cook, I had nothing to do. With that nothing, I would make my way through the world.